Welcome to a Wonder Junkie podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Anderson.
Nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows. Nobody has the faintest idea. The best guesses are lies. You may be sure of it.
Brian, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Absolutely. I know you're busy. You've got a lot of things going. So I had a friend recently, his mother actually sent me your Instagram and showed me some of your products over at SaunaSpace. And I've been having a lot of guests on this show that are interested in mitochondrial health and quantum biology and, Gerald Pollack and all these guys. I've had quite a few of these folks on, Jack Cruz. And so you seem to have a lot of knowledge in this space, and it would be fun to explore some of your ideas and share this with the audience and let them start to discover more about sunlight and the stuff you're creating. So,
yeah, absolutely. I'd love to dive into it. Yeah, I've also been a junkie, been kind of a light and sauna junkie for a long time. In the beginning, I didn't understand any of it. I just found something really cool that healed me, and it seemed to be tremendous in helping others heal themselves. And that sort of kind of switched careers and started SaunaSpace. That was like about almost 11 years ago now.
it's amazing. What was, can you give the audience a little? I heard your podcast with Wisdom. What was it called? Wellness and Wisdom. And I got to hear a lot about you, but I'd love to explore a little bit about your background and what you were doing before you got into this and how you discovered this field and healed yourself. So,
yeah, after the crash of '08, I grew up in Montana. Both my parents are physicians. My mom's a more natural-based practitioner. My dad's a now retired radiologist. So I grew up with both sides of modern healthcare. Definitely have come to greatly respect what my mom was doing. Not so much in the beginning because it seemed like my dad made more money. So it was more impressive. But my mom was prescribing supplements in the 80s in Montana, like way before the internet. So she's always been really ahead of everything. And then I traveled a lot during school. I spent 7 years in school, and 4 of it I spent abroad. And when I got back, I was in chemistry. So I have a degree in chemistry and Spanish literature. But at the end of my career, I knew that didn't serve me. I wanted to do something else. And an opportunity came up with the crash of '08 to start a rental real estate company. And so I moved down to where my parents had moved, to Columbia, Missouri, which I'm coming to you from now. And I love to tinker with things. I love to build things. I love to make things beautiful around me. But I definitely didn't have the emotional constitution to be a landlord. I'm just like a nice guy. There's a whole aspect of that. I was just thinking very left brain about it, very much like I'll accumulate wealth and I'm my own boss. So there were some things that pleased me about that. But during that time, I had a health issue, a host of health issues that came up. They were not so severe, any which one, but it was me. And I was looking to my own solution. So I was dealing with insomnia and acne and was kind of lethargic and kind of irascible. And I felt like I wasn't my best self, and I didn't want to take any drugs, even though I was, a couple doctors I went to prescribe things. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so I ended up talking to my mom, and she said, hey, you probably just need to detox, Brian. You need to get a sauna. And I was like, whoa, that's a cool idea. And I researched, and the research on sauna is impressive. You may have covered that in some of your previous episodes. It's pretty mind-blowing, actually. I didn't know anything about light at that time, didn't know anything about light therapy, but I discovered Dr. Kellogg's work called Light Therapeutics that's published online. You can read it. And he invented, shortly after the advent of incandescent light bulbs, he invented this gadget called the electric light bath. So he said there's something about these light bulbs, there's something special about them, and something about the light is it not only heats the body better than the air, there's something special about the light. he didn't know anything about mitochondria or photobiomodulation, but he recognized he had this visionary aspect to him, and he's kind of has some is known for things that didn't work out well. He had some crazy ideas, let's say, as well. But nonetheless, he was on the vanguard. He was trying things, and he was trying to get things work. He was trying to help people heal, and so he was doing like uh, um, he was doing electroshock therapy and cold therapy and sauna and gut cleanses. He's doing like a lot of amazing things. He's actually the brother of the guy that invented Kellogg's cornflakes, which is its own funny story about lowering male libido and preventing masturbation. So this guy though, he saw the opportunity and the power of the incandescent light bulb. There's something special about it. So he writes this book where he documents that he tested it on 50,000 patients in early part of the 20th century. Over 200,000 log sauna sessions. You can read about it. And I was intrigued by this. And so I was like, I want one of those. And I built my own. And I used it right before bed. And then I slept like a baby. And I was like, well, there's one problem gone. And I continued to use it, right, for many months. And
Did it take you a while to build that bulb, the initial light
no, the
that you
initial
created?
bulb I just made. I found a modern doctor's rendition of it. I just made one, a very bricolage setup, using just local parts and like painter's cloths from Home Depot. And it was, I sat on a little office chair basically on the inside and in front of these bulbs. And no, so it was very bricolage. It was pretty ugly, but the power of the therapy really revealed itself to me. And as I continued to use it, everything else resolved. And I also realized that I had some brain fog I wasn't even really aware of, because my cognitive function had really improved, like patience, recall, things like that, but like more mood things too. It's just more positive, more patient, more in the flow of things. And so it surprised me that this technology wasn't available, because there's a lot of saunas out there. And later I learned about light therapy. There's at this time, even in 2013, there was some LED based red light therapy. And so I said, you know what? And so I started making some for friends and family and some few people. And I was on my mom's website. You had to like email me by PayPal. And then I would give you a PayPal invoice. It was really crude how I started. Meanwhile, I was like, yeah, okay, this is a thing on the side. And the rental real estate is where I'm going to accumulate wealth. That's my vocation. But I had an early call from a very early customer who called me up crying, telling me this harrowing story of onset of fibromyalgia and autoimmune symptoms, where she lost her job and she got trapped in her home. She couldn't leave, and because of her symptomology, and it was straining all of her relationships. She's like, her life was ruined. And so she had been using my product only for like 2 or 3 months. And she calls me crying, telling me how she's got her life back. She's got her job back. She's out and about. Her relationship with her husband, everything is transformed for the better. And it was this light bulb moment for me.
Hmm.
I was like, wow, I'm I love this. I love helping people help themselves. And it being involved in manufacturing and building and creating, there's a very 3D aspect of it that I really enjoyed. And people were prepaying me, and I didn't have to collect rent, or whatever. And so after I got that call in one of my rental houses that I was fixing, and I basically dropped my tools and was done. And I ended up selling that house half remodeled and like never went back to it. So and I didn't realize it at the time. I was still thinking, yeah, okay, another 6 weeks, I'll get back. But I found something that was very fulfilling to me, and I kind of dove into it. I had this sort of gut moment where I was like, this is it. This is
Hmm.
something that I'm both passionate about, and I can make money and do it ethically and help people. And there's a need. There's a need in the market. And so I started SaunaSpace with a couple $100 in my pocket, basically, and and made enough revenue to apply and get a small business loan 5 months later. And I went in there with all these little models of like, this is what I want to make, and I need machines to make it. And that was the start of the company. So it very much evolved from a personal health journey into a, a purpose.
It's awesome. I'd love to hear more about the difference between what your sauna is like and why it's so unique and different, of course, with the incandescent elements to it and the light component to it versus normal saunas that people hear about and buy and use. And then also getting into like some of the story behind incandescence and modern light in general, because I think it's such a fascinating subject that most people, including myself, just only a year ago, hadn't really thought about. It's like this thing that's right in front of us, how all of human history, we've just been outdoor creatures, beings. And then in the last 100 years or so, we've been indoor beings and we've just been just stripping ourselves from the most important element of nature. And so I think a lot of people don't realize it, even though it seems so obvious. So maybe we could get into some of that history a little bit. And then I'm curious also, I'm asking you a lot here, but what was your idea about natural sunlight in the beginning when you were starting to use sauna and starting to use these incandescent bulbs?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go one by one. For the first question, regular saunas heat you up with the air. So you have to have the air really hot, you preheat it, and the air heats you up. And that's not just a Finnish sauna, that's also a far infrared sauna. That's why you have to preheat it. You need the air hot because it's primarily the air that's heating you. And with far infrared saunas, it's because the far infrared tissue penetration of that wavelength is pretty shallow. And the reason for that is our bodies are full of water. And water, from a physics perspective, begins to absorb light in near infrared, in the high energy infrared, but only partially. So near infrared goes deepest into the body. It's called in science, it's called the optical window of the human body. The very high frequency, like ultraviolet and visible light, is absorbed by melanin in our skin and hemoglobin in our blood. And then on the other side of the optical window, light begins to absorb is absorbed by water at about 980 nanometers is starting, just a little bit. So there's this window there where the well of it, the well being like the deepest penetrating wavelengths, are right in the middle of near infrared at about 950 nanometers or so. It actually penetrates a lot deeper than red light, which is probably another question to answer later. So the far infrared wavelengths way out in the end of the spectrum are at the point where water is 100% absorbing all of the wavelengths. And since our bodies are mostly water, like volumetrically, we're like 99% water, the water stops that wavelength from penetrating deeply. So the far infrared saunas heat the air up. The Finnish saunas, the steam saunas, they have this really hot air that heats you from the outside in. It's what in thermodynamics you would call like conductive heating. So the convection through the air, and then it conductively heats you from the outside in. And it's wonderful. It works great as long as you stay in there long enough to achieve the outcomes that are clinically observed for the benefit of the sauna, which is 1.5 pounds of water that you sweat out on average, and a 3-degree core temperature increase Fahrenheit. So basically, you're heating your body up and you get a good sweat on. If you do that, you've had a great sauna session. The difference between that and our technology, the incandescent bulb, is that we're using mostly near infrared light to heat the space and the person. And the near infrared light heats the body radiantly instead of by conduction. So the wavelengths of near infrared go many inches into the body and heat it from within. So instead of an outside in heating, it's like an inside and outside heating at the same time. And that results practically in a SaunaSpace sauna session not needing any preheating. And you achieve that outcome of sweating a lot, raising core temperature in 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the model of what we offer, which one you choose. So the incandescent, the electric light bath sauna session is really fast, number one. And then number two, it has light therapy too, because we're using a predominantly near infrared light source to heat the body. The near infrared wavelengths beyond 1,000 nanometers heat the body up radiantly. So it's like optimal heat therapy, 1,000 to 1,500 nanometers. But also with the incandescent bulb, with our bulb, there's a lot of 600 to 1,000 nanometer light. And these wavelengths do what we call light therapy, mitochondrial stimulation. We have a light receptor protein called the cytochrome. Cell of light is what that means in Latin. And that absorbs wavelengths of 600 to 1,000 nanometers. So the visible red light that we see and near infrared light that we don't see. And so the big difference with our product is we're giving you both of those therapies, which our bodies don't really understand as two different things. Our bodies understand it as full spectrum infrared. And it mimics very closely what we get from the sun, except that there's actually no blue light or ultraviolet light from our firelight bulbs. We've focused only on what I would call the healing complement to the sun spectrum. There's definitely some benefit to ultraviolet light and blue light for different systems in our body. It's dose dependent. The problem is we don't get those wavelengths of light from the sun because we don't get any sun at all. And instead we get way too much blue light from our screens. So ultraviolet light, the problem with ultraviolet light is it's ionizing radiation. It actually mutates our DNA. And blue light has a similar effect indirectly through free radical production. It has like a stressful effect on the cell, a little less so than ultraviolet light, but still there. So these are the killer wavelengths of the sun. And they do have benefit. The blue light activates melatonin production in the pineal gland. It helps us regulate our circadian rhythm. Ultraviolet light helps the body generate vitamin D. So that's also an important thing. But when we get it from the sun, we get mostly near infrared. And so let me just, we can probably jump back to other comparisons between saunas and other stuff, but let's flow into the next question. Like, what's up with sunlight? What's up with the history of sunlight? So most people don't know this. The sun has this spectrum that, if you're geeky and you've looked at, is like this bell curve with the long tail and the infrared. These are all the wavelengths that come from the sun in this particular power distribution. This is what natural light is. This is what we were divinely created, or we've evolved to understand as healthy light. And we're light beings on the inside. And that's not just a metaphor. All this, the most fundamental systems of our body are ran by electricity, which is electromagnetism, which is what light is. So we use light inside our bodies, and we're very powerfully influenced by light. So if you get a lot of blue screens really late at night, your testosterone is going to be really low the next day. And it has so many other like implications for health that are problematic. It promotes production of overgrowth of like bad bacteria because they accelerate their growth when they're stressed out by blue light and EMF. So, and EMFs too. That's another great example of, hey, just because we can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't affect us. It absolutely affects us because we have all these systems in our bodies that are run on light. Our DNA emits light. Everybody has auric fields that you can measure with a camera. And so many examples of that. All that to say that we're very much influenced by light, and the light that we've always had, there's only always been one source, the incandescent light of the sun that creates and nourishes continually all life on Earth. We'd be toast really quick if there was no sunlight. So I think we understand this. But in the modern age, we forget like how important it is. We almost assume, okay, it's there, it's a part of our environment. But it's actually a very primal aspect of who we are and the most powerful tool for our health. So the first light therapy was heliotherapy, sun therapy. So if you had a problem, you would go out and sit in the sun for extended periods of time, usually fast too. And like if you look back to the Spanish flu, the Surgeon General in Massachusetts did this huge study that you can read, and he said, look, my conclusion is, after treating all of this Spanish flu now for 2 years, that the best possible thing is to heal patients is sunlight and fresh air. And then you can go back to like the Civil War, where they would compare patients that they would put outside versus ones that they kept in tents, wounded soldiers. And the ones that got sunlight did a lot better. Their death rates were much lower. And you know this when you walk out in the sun, or when you're deprived of sun. You're like, wow, I wish it was sunny. I wish I could get some sun. And when you're out in the sun, we're little lizards. It feels really good. So what is it? What is it composed of? What's the nature of sunlight itself? So sun has that spectrum that I mentioned, some ultraviolet light, a lot of visible light, a lot of near infrared, and then a rapidly decreasing amount of mid and far infrared, the low energy infrared. But because, as I said before, near infrared light penetrates the deepest into the body, if we look at our experience with the sun differently, instead of looking at the spectrum, if we say, well, what energy am I absorbing from the sun? And in terms of photons absorbed per second, so the amount of power we absorb from the sun, over 70% of it is near infrared. Because of its deep penetration, the vast majority of our experience with the sun is near infrared. So when the sun's ultraviolet light and blue light hits us, we're getting we're getting vitamin D and some good regulation, but we're also getting this oxidative stress and this DMA damage. We're getting a small amount of that though. And that is totally counteracted by this huge healing effect that comes from the largest portion of sunlight, near infrared, namely the mitochondrial activation and also the melatonin production. Melatonin is the body's number one antioxidant, and the 94% of the body's melatonin is made in the cell. So we have melatonin in our pineal gland. It gets released at the end of the day, and that's blood-based melatonin. But melatonin doing its job at like taking care of all this oxidative stress all the time, the sun is literally filling up our antioxidant reserves more than any amount of blueberries that we could consume or anything else. It's the number one thing is from the sun. And then also, I'm sure you've talked about in previous podcasts, this idea of red light therapy or light therapy. So that's defined as the use of red and near infrared light to heal damaged cells and optimize function of healthy cells. And that's every cell of the body. So all of our deep organs, our brain, everything. But only near infrared light, for example, penetrates the skull. So if we want this healing in our brain, a red light cap's not going to do that. That's just treating your skin and your hair follicles and stuff. You have to use near infrared to go in deep. And we see that, again, we pivot to the natural environment. That's what's predominant in our natural environment. So the sun is an incandescent light source. Incandescence is where something heats up in nature hot enough and it begins to emit light naturally in this way that we can predict, with like Planck's law and physics. And so the sun is the greatest example of that. And that's what we originally used. But then, either man was given fire or he figured out how to make it somehow. So, there's an amazing podcast on the Emerald podcast that goes into the history of fire. That's really beautiful, actually. I highly recommend that. And essentially, man figured out how to make his own sun, his own fire. And from that event, we have many different cultural traditions, like Agnihotra in Ayurvedic, in the Ayurvedic culture and Ayurvedic science is like this ritual where you cast blessed ghee into a sacred fire, and the wavelengths of the sunrise or the sunset hit that and like cast this healing magic onto you. And the idea of gazing at the sunrise and the sunset, these are the times of the day when the sun spectrum is predominantly near infrared red, so it's predominantly more healing. It's at the middle of the day, at the zenith, that we get the most ultraviolet and blue light. So we're figuring out more and more. We're not just living under the sun passively, like we're figuring out how to optimize our relationship with the sun. And now we're making our own fire, and we're using that for so many things. And fire is such a primordial, spiritual, practical tool that we've had this relationship with it for so long, right? Up until recently, where nobody has fireplaces anymore or does bonfires so much. And then at some point, somebody figured out, well, let's heat up using fire. Let's burn wood in an enclosed space and get the hair really hot, and let's sit in it. And it'll purify our bodies. It'll purify our minds. And so in every culture in the world, you see a sauna tradition of some kind, from Turkish baths to Native American sweat lodges to Celtic, like sweat caves. to, and going into hot pools, hot springs and stuff across the world. So there's this wisdom of the ancients in the use of sauna for purification of the body, mind, and spirit, like all things. And we definitely use fire to power all that back in the beginning. And then not much changed until the 20th century with the advent of electricity, which is this amazing thing. Now we're getting more to the fundamental aspect of fire, like let's create electromagnetism, which is how the sun creates fire. It's using incandescence to create fire. Let's do that. Let's apply our knowing in a different way. And electricity was invented, and then the incandescent light bulb was invented, just pretty much at the same time. I mean, that was part of the development of it. And then once the incandescent bulb came around in 1887, the version we know today, there was this whole cohort of doctors who seized upon it. Dr. Kellogg was only one to use it for healing. There's like Dr. Gaudiali used it, his spectrochrome therapy. There's this guy, Dr. Babbitt, who used it. The Dr. Dinshaw. There was all these. They're all contemporaries of Tesla. This is the late 1800s, early 20th century. And like the spectrochrome therapies, you have an incandescent light bulb and you put little different colors of filtered glass in front of it in different parts of the body for different ailments. There's a whole methodology to it. It's really interesting. His son actually wrote a book on it, Dr. Gaudiali's son, that you can read today. And these guys had this incredible success with light therapy. And even before electricity, they were like the first sort of modern light therapy beyond just heliotherapy, like enhancing it was they would put red stained glass windows up that were southern facing, and they were treating patients of like lupus, for example, lupus vulgaris. They would put them in front of the glass. The red glass absorbs ultraviolet and blue, but lets in all the red and near infrared for the most part. And they would 100% heal lupus, which was something that people used to die from. And so, excuse me. So there was this magical time that was also when there was so much exciting combination of ancient wisdom and new modern observation in healing the body naturally, with all the natural paths across the US and across the world, cancer clinics across the US, chiropractic, so many other things. And then the mic dropped, basically, with the publication of Flexner Report and the machinations of big oil, which is basically the Rockefeller family at that time. And they purchased the first pharmaceutical company that made the first drugs, and the first plastic came out was Bakelite. And so there was an agenda to displace natural medicine with petrochemical based medicine. And you see that with the Flexner Report, which radically changed what was taught in medical schools across the US. And then the persecution of all natural health providers with the rise of the AMA and the FDA. And some people know that story, like chiropractic was made illegal, and all the cancer spas we had everywhere, like all went south of the border, basically. But most people don't know about the electric light bulb, the light therapy component of that. So that was all also obliterated. Like Dr. Gaudiali at the end of his life was, he had been sued by the FDA so many times and jailed so many times. And he was like restricted to his home. He couldn't give any speeches. He couldn't educate anybody on his therapy. It was like, there was a court order to not do that. And then when he died, the FDA went in and looted his residence and took all of his machines.
Wow.
It's this whole thing. It was like a really scary, but that's what happened. So then, and then fast forward to the present, probably in the last 2 decades, maybe a little more, there's been a renewal. Petrochemical medicine has not been working well for chronic illness. And there's been a rejection in the market, and the market is seeking people are looking for something that actually works. So we start to look back into these things, and and at this time we've developed LEDs start coming out and lasers. So So scientific folks are looking at the use of different wavelengths of light. What are the biological results? And then we have this model, and then now we know, oh, the inside of the cell, the DNA, the mitochondria, and we figured out, wow, the body has light receptor proteins. So it's a crazy concept of this biological molecule that absorbs only certain wavelengths of light, and upon their absorption it translates, the photons get translated in some electronic biological process in the body. So now we know, wow, it seems like red light and infrared, like they work amazing. And so we've already defined that. Now there's been 7,000, 8,000 studies on photobiomodulation. It's pretty much good for everything. And it makes sense because we used to get a heavy dose of 3 to 4 hours of sunlight a day. And then uh, and so then that advances, and eventually we get to more of the present, where red light therapy is well understood, accepted in the market. All the products that are available, almost all of them, are LED based, and that's the predominant technology. But this whole time, if you look back, there's like 130 years of safe use testing of incandescent bulbs for sauna and also for light therapy. So that's kind of my story. Is that really intrigued me, and um and so I used it on myself. I used it on others, and SaunaSpace became what it is today. But that's only part of the history of light and our relationship to it. And if I may say something about incandescent bulbs, you know, nothing's as perfect as what the Creator divinely wrought, but or has wrought. But incandescent bulbs are really close in many ways, and they were wonderful for light in our homes because they do produce light just like nature does through incandescence. And we've removed them for the sake of energy efficiency. But what we've also removed that component that we don't see. We're so focused on task lighting and light to actually see and do things that we didn't realize with the push to LEDs, like, hey, there's a lot of healing benefit in these invisible wavelengths that we've now removed from our homes, where now if you go to the store, there are only LED light bulbs, and there's various, government regulation that continues across the world with incandescence. But if we're going to have man-made light, that still now LEDs don't quite replace it. There definitely been improvements in LED technology. Regular LEDs flicker at the rate of the source electricity. So in the US, it's 60 hertz. So typical LED lighting turns on and off 120 times a second. This is also a problem with fluorescent lighting. And that's stressful as too. It's a strobe light. It's stressful to our nervous system. And again, because we didn't have it in nature, our bodies don't know what to do with it. So with the blue light and the flickering aspects of LED light and fluorescent light, we now work and live indoors kind of oblivious to the inherently more stressful nature of these LED light sources versus the old incandescent light. And also we're away from the sun. So like that's the light therapy history, maybe in a nutshell, that I would give. And then there's also the sauna technology industry. A lot of people ask me this, well, why aren't there more incandescent saunas, and incandescent sauna companies? And definitely the politics of the early 20th century affected that. Nobody knew about it. But then also it's the development of the product itself as a consumer product. So the original sauna is a finished sauna. It's a wood box. And then far infrared emitters were developed in the 60s or early 70s, something like that. And they're like, oh, we can keep what people recognize as a sauna the same. It's this wood box. And we can put these shallow far infrared emitters in. We can produce heat with them, and they use less electricity. So you don't need a hard wire like this special connection. You can more or less, have like a 20 amp outlet, and you can use this. And so that's the way that the industry developed, kind of. And then we didn't know at that time that far infrared emitters produce a lot of magnetic field and electric field too. And nobody was really concerned with in the beginning about the stressful effects on biology of man-made EMF. And so, yeah, so here we are today. Like I had my healing experience and it wasn't available and still it's not like, we're a small brand, but we our technology and our design and other aspects of our experience have really brought in this difference. And there still continues to be a debate, like what's the best type of light therapy? Is it what we're doing? Is it red light? Is it near infrared? Is it a combo panel? Do we need all the wavelengths? And there's some cool stuff out there. And then there's people who have full spectrum bulbs too that are used to be fluorescent, basically a blue fluorescent bulb, and now are they're adding different wavelengths to them so that they're more broad spectrum, not just blue. And then there's vitamin D lamps too, where it's mostly
Hmm.
ultraviolet light. And there's a lot of people like, this is it. This is the thing for me. And it's not prescriptive. Everybody needs to figure out like what's best for them. And that's what I've always supported and encouraged. But if we do look at nature, the best thing is the sunlight or the closest that we can get to that. And so my feelings with our product are that the sun is great if people can get it. Most people with are getting like 7 minutes of sunshine a day and living pretty toxic lifestyles and are really stressed out and overworked and what they really need is a big healing dose. Like uh and so if they can't get out and get in the sun, or it's cloudy all day long, or it's up in Canada or Michigan, our product serves a dual purpose. One, they're getting that big dose of near infrared that you're supposed to get from the sun each day. That's all healing. And we're giving them an opportunity to do this most powerful way to detoxify the body. And that's backed up by the literature too, not just the ancient wisdom. The the frequent use of sauna reduces your risk of dying of all things non-trauma related, reduces all cause mortality. So it doesn't matter what your problem is, it's going to help with it. And that goes back to really making sense. Like uh, even in natural wellness, people get really left brained and they're still not stepping into their power and empowering themselves to think for themselves. A lot of people are still looking for this perfect protocol. Look, I don't want to think about it. Just tell me what supplements to take. Tell me what protocols to do. Just give me a plan. And at the same time, we all have this unlimited potential. We're all divine light beings, and we have this intuition inside. But we got to remember it. We got to work it and develop it again. For some of us, it's kind of been lost, myself included, in the beginning. And so, with our product, we're not just about do and do this and do that. The protocol is pretty flexible, and we encourage people to just be and get out of the doing and the obsession. Recognize that, hey, I have this unlimited universe of healing inside. This human engineering, there is no tool like it. It's perfect. It just needs some few simple things to run really well. And one of those is it needs to be clean. If you want to be your highest and best self, that will always be limited by things inside of you that aren't you, in a very like real physical sense. And nowadays we're in a very toxic world, and the nutrient value of the food is depleted. And so like I was just in a trip last year to I went to Damanhur, Italy, and then to Egypt. Had this really fun, amazing trip. And one of the gals on the trip was this French woman, and we were talking one time, and she made this joke, and we were laughing about how many supplements Americans take. And I was like, right, yeah, because our lives are so weird, and they're so synthetic. But at the same time, I came back and I looked at my shelf and I was seeing her echo in my mind because I have all these supplements and I'm very healthy, and I'm living. I have very healthy living habits, and yet we I don't know if she's been to America or not, but the food here has like nothing in it, even the organic food. So I found my peace with what she said, but it is funny and it is real. Like there's certain actions that we need to take nowadays to be our best, to be optimal, that our ancestors just didn't have to deal with. And the food is one of that, and a lot of heavy metals, nanoparticles, nanoplastics from modern industry and also modern EMFs, all these things. And there's great solutions that are accessible for all of these things. You just kind of have to figure out what's working, best for you. And for us, we pretty much every person I've met who's used our product with discipline just falls in love with it and keeps it. But we don't, we're not a pill, we're not a supplement. You having success with any sauna or any light therapy requires you to empower yourself, be a little bit disciplined, and use it with frequency. Because remember, we were out in the sun every day, and so saunas. I use my sauna 5 days a week, and if you're using LED light therapy, you can use it every day, and the same thing with our portable product. We have the glow. I don't know if you can see it here in the camera, maybe a little bit. So our portable product, the glow, is really cool. It's actually has some standalone things that are different from other light therapy products because it's not LED. It does provide targeted therapy, light therapy and heat therapy on the body, but it also cancels out blue light and flickering light. So you can have this little guy next to you when you're at the computer, like I am with you, and it will help you with technology fatigue and screen fatigue. It actually cancels out the measurable amount of blue light that gets to the body. So, and also for like morning reset to mimic the sunrise, and for clean light after dark that's not flickering. It's a really cool product that has so many uses. But this, I have it on because I'm indoors. I have it on whenever I'm indoors, even if there's no screen, because and then ancestral humans didn't live indoors at all. And you mentioned that at the beginning. They basically went indoors to go to sleep or take a nap maybe, and that's it. Otherwise, why would you not be outside? And so I'm not saying quit your job, become a hermit. I'm looking for solutions so that we can thrive in this modern world, because there are some amazing things that we're doing. There's definitely an expansion of consciousness that's going on, and particularly in wellness and natural wellness, but also overall. But we got to navigate these threats, these challenges in our modern world that are physical, like I've mentioned, are also psychological and spiritual, to find our place of being where we're using our creative powers, and we're loving what we're doing, and we're healthy. More than anything else, we're really healthy, because the body is the system in which our being sits, and is the tool by which we create, in the world.
It's beautiful. You did such a nice job encapsulating that story and packaging it. It's such a big, deep story with so many threads you could go into, but I really appreciate that, because a lot of people have probably never heard a lot of the components that you just shared. And there's almost a weird war on light, as you brought up the Rockefeller story, and you start to see the
Totally.
war on light. It's like the sunscreen industry and the correlation between cancer when that was manufactured and created and deployed. And then you start to look at the deployment of blue screen technology, and when they started to strip away all of the natural incandescent bulbs, and now we know that they're going to ban them in the next few years. And it's just a fascinating story about incentives driving outcomes. And I think that the more people can just bring awareness to this, you're doing it right now, which is why I wanted you on, because you have the ability to package that story so nicely for people so that they can then implement the simple, practical behavior shifts, because that's what we at the end of the day want. Mm-hmm. And for most people, even if you can't afford a sauna, it's nice to remind them that they can go and be disciplined enough to get up if you can and get that early morning sunlight, and to just be outside more often if you can. But like, I'm sitting in front of these, I can't wait to connect you, like I said, with Scott Zimmerman, because he's such a good person. He's not driven by money whatsoever, but him and you together, I can't wait to send him this conversation, because I know he's going to be fired up to meet you. His Nira lights are very similar to what you have in front of you, and I have two of them on me right now. And he has an AC/DC conversion kit on it as well, so there's no more of that flickering.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to wear blue blockers, right? And what he's trying to do is get them in the space stations and things like that, because astronauts get pre-diabetic or they get lethargic, and all of the negative components that they're going to have. And then think about schools and hospitals, and we're putting our kids in these false lit environments that are just damaging them, lowering their vibration. If you think about light and vibration frequency as the essence of who we are, And so we're actually just poisoning everybody. And it sounds horrible, but we don't know it. Most people just
Hmm.
think, oh, this is great. It's technology. Here we are. But once that story comes out, people demand and we create a new market. It's like it's happening in the food industry with RFK and these guys getting in and casein calamines. You're hearing all the food. It's like we've known that for a long time, but all of a sudden it's this mainstream story. But what we're missing is the light story. And even people like RFK should be talking about that as the essence of the story. And that's the part that I'm hearing the part that's missing is the nefarious component to it, where people are willing to go and buy out all the computer companies that are putting out good screens, or the light industry. And it's like, man,
Hmm.
there's a war on light. And it's an interesting war. I don't like the word war very much, but it's like we just need to understand more about it, and that's why we're here. So
Yeah, like when you walk in a mall or a casino and everything is really, really brightly lit with a lot of LED light, like very powerfully. Not um, that's not so they can clean the floor. It's definitely intended to influence you to stay there and to get you into a sympathetic nervous state so that you become more reactive and your awareness decreases and your upper brain function decreases and you become more passive, cognitively. It's and those studies of that are old. That's not something in the last few years. It's been known for a long time that this is how you and it's a way you can use light to influence people's consumer behavior. And
yeah,
and like you said, it's totally manifold. It's across like all things, all industries. Yeah, the kids at school, they have a Wi-Fi antenna in every room. They have the junk blue light, and then they're feeding them trash. And I would say for their minds too, to a large
yeah.
degree. And it's I don't know if I would call it if you don't want to call it a war, you could call it a discussion. There's a conversation going on between unity and that which is true and natural and real, and the other side that I'm not even going to call like light and dark. It's more like unity and separation. Those there's all these forces of that are trying to, whether consciously or not, create like this AI matrix that we live in where we don't make any decisions. Even if we are free, like we don't want to make any decisions. We have robots do everything. We just lay there. Like that movie with Bruce Willis where they have like an
Armageddon.
android that walks around because they're too scared of going out themselves, like,
Mm.
and they just lay there all day and they're really unhealthy and they live in this virtual world. There's a drive for that, and maybe there's people who truly want that, and that's okay too. But me, I want the risk and the dynamicism of the real,
Hmm.
that's going on here, and so yeah, they probably won't get to light. They'll probably, and if they can just focus on maybe food and water initially, the new administration, that will, I think, do wonders for everybody. But yes, this is going on, and there's also simple solutions to it. You've mentioned one from your friend, and there are good LEDs out there. Where you have drivers in them to convert them so that they're not flickering, and the spectrums are more amenable to human biology. I got this little reading light, this cheap little reading light that only has red and orange wavelengths, so there's no blue in it at all, and it's wonderful. It's things like that. You can still live here in America and still enjoy yourself and benefit from technology, but understand that your body is programmed to get what its pre-technology environment was and on all levels: spiritual, emotional, physical, food, light, water, and and we all know this inside, but we also have either forgotten or we just have so many distractions nowadays and so many things sucking our energy. But these for people, like I meet so many people, they don't sleep well. And it's like, have you stopped watching TV or looking at your phone after, like, even like 7 p.m.
Hmm.
and, oh, well, what's wrong with that? Or, people who they're in the dark with their phone and it's like on full brightness, it's like the spotlight on their face. And all these things affect us. And it's hard for people maybe to grasp because it affects us in different ways based on our unique being, our unique physiology. People get different symptoms. Some people might have good sleep, but they get neuropsychiatric symptoms like nervousness and anxiety, and other people have gut issues or skin issues, and so everybody thinks that they're their own. There's something unique going on. No, we're all the symptoms may be manifest uniquely, but the sources and these problems are all the same for all of us, and the solutions are similar too. There's a light grounding sauna for purification, real natural food, loving yourself, taking time to invest in yourself, and you don't have to be in a savior mentality. That's also a lot of programming we get. We need to help others. The way we help others is to make sure we ourselves are super strong and aware and aligned. And if we spend all of our time like we're programmed to help others, this is also something that affected me in the beginning. We become weaker and weaker and weaker. And we have in America like early onset Alzheimer's disease, that people are getting Alzheimer's, so early in life. And that's also something that's addressed with frequent use of sauna. Sauna reduces your risk of dementia with frequent use. So I love it's not the only thing I do, certainly, but I love the niche that I've fell into. And here at the company, beyond just the technology itself, I've always been really receptive to what people want and feedback. And so our design is a lot more portable, from the beginning, for people who are a little more nomadic nowadays.
Hmm.
And you can kind of take it from place to place, and it's easy to use. And then we've also in our product implemented like the grounding mat in the floor, and we have our high-end model has a silver fabric that's made of silver and organic cotton that creates a grounded Faraday cage. In the beginning, it didn't have that, but now we have these options, so you're like completely protected from the environment's man-made EMF. And all of this creates an experience, because I was just talking to someone about this recently, like the difference between a routine and a ritual. And when you talk to people about their fitness routine, right, they tell you all the things they do and how they knock it out, and it's awesome. And the problem is, though, we're spiritual beings, and we don't really, routine will never satisfy us. We want ritual. So we want to imbue meaning, not just, drink the cup of, grind the beans, brew the coffee, and drink it real quick as we're walking out the door.
Hmm.
If we sit and, we savor the aroma and just take away the distractions, then we take that sip and we enjoy it with a loved one. It takes on this whole new meaning, the same exact act that brings so much more value, to us. And so for me, for the sauna experience, I've also taken that approach. Like, I want you to go again and forget everything else. I want you to return to yourself and just do absolutely nothing for the next 15 to 30 minutes, and watch how much better you feel, afterwards, immediately, and also in the days and months that follow, as you return to yourself. And as we return to ourselves and we get deep into who we are and what we want, our aura and our presence strengthens. And I've also found that many of our customers have used our product initially, and it's not just helping them heal like whatever their eczema or their gut problem. It's a tool for fortifying their will, so that then and increasing their awareness. So then they look around, they're like, I am gonna turn off the TV after 7, and you wake up and you're like, I'm gonna go see the sun, and I'm not gonna eat all those croissants. Like, there's this positive effect when the body gets stronger and your awareness increases. You start to notice the things that aren't aligned with you. It's like you mentioned before, your frequency increases. And then things that are lower than your frequency become really obvious, where before, you had no idea. So it's, and all that happens in my product, and also other saunas too, essentially, that you don't do anything, and that's what I love about it. You just be, and
Mm.
we're beings, right? And it's not just a saying. Like, we're designed to be more than do, and our ancestors lived that way. Our ancestors were chilling, relaxing, lazy most of the time, but they're really metabolically flexible and super healthy, and we're able to like jump up and take care of things as it was needed with 100% attention and superhuman strength, and then it was just back to chilling and hanging out.
It's right on, man. I love the part about the ritual and all of the components you added to block the EMF, because what I've started to see with the West, especially, is we're everyone's trying to hurry up and biohack or hurry up and get the nutrients. And the momentum in our culture is praised and glorified, but the slowing down is never the thing that's praised. If you say to someone, "Hey, how have you been?" and they say, "Oh, I've been busy," that's like, "Oh, cool. That means you're thriving." And to me, that means you're lacking awareness or you're mismanaging attention, unfortunately. And
Mm.
it took me years to slow down and connect with the breath and learn yoga to heal back and body and mind and all that. And implement that into my life and build a relationship with the slowing down piece, which is what I think the sauna is. The
Yeah.
biggest part of the sauna for me is to unplug, go in, slow down, and connect with the breath and be in gratitude for the fact that I'm alive, awake, and aware. And the gratitude piece is obviously medicine. So it's like your ritual. But think of how many people I've gone in these like collective saunas at, like, say, a Lifetime Fitness or something. And I'm in there with no headphones and I'm just sitting, and people come in and they don't know any better. It's not their fault, but they're gasping through their mouth. They're staring at their phone the whole time. They have Bluetooth headphones in. And so I'm wondering what your ideas are. And it's very strange. You're like, this is so interesting, and I'm just like, holy shit. So, and then I want to know what your idea is of people driving across town in rush hour to go to these new optimization centers, which they're everywhere now. They're blowing up,
Hmm.
sitting in these almost microwave saunas or EMF false lit environments, because a lot of them don't have the right lighting in their space. Not trying to judge this, but I'm just showing an example of, we think we're healing, but we're rushing across town when we probably could have just went home, slowed down, got outside, went for a walk, or it's almost like we're defeating the purpose, constantly seeking the next workshop or the next healing modality or the next therapy or the next psychedelic experience. And a lot of it's like, let's slow it down, take a
Hmm.
deep breath, connect with that, get outside a little more. And then maybe if you are going to choose to optimize, really do your research and find people like yourself that are creating an environment that are mitigating all of the unintended consequences that come from creating things, which is where we've gotten ourselves in the most trouble. Creating things and not looking at all the unintended consequences has gotten us in more trouble health wise for our psyche, our spirit, our collective, than just slowing down and looking at why we would create it in the first place. And if we do create it, let's mitigate those negatives. And it seems like you've really taken a lot of conscious effort to create something, which I appreciate. It's what Scott's doing too. If I
Hmm.
find somebody doing something with awareness and with that component in it where they're like, hold on, let's make sure we're not adding harm, I'm going to tell everybody on the planet about that forever. And so I really appreciate what you're doing. And I just wanted to bring that piece around because I see this more often than not, the momentum culture.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's good that people are going to those things and getting some exposure. Better that than a petrochemical drug, definitely. And they're just on their journey. Ultimately, maybe the biggest malaise that we have is as in the modern age is we've given our power away. And this is a natural part of growing up. Like, your mom and dad tell you what to do in the beginning. You don't get to decide everything. But then we go to school and you have to ask to go to the bathroom and all these things. And we've given our power away in all levels, and probably in health almost more than anything nowadays. And so until a person recognizes and remembers, hey, I actually can decide everything about my health. I may have to commit to something. I may have to invest in something if there's something there I want to do, but I actually get to decide 100%. I don't have to do or listen to anything that comes from some external expert of some kind. And the system is definitely geared against all of us, like the priest in the white frock. Like, when we're really sick, we go to the real doctor. But at the same time, when we remember and we take things in our own hands, then we become our own solution. And we realize that just like the doctor, though they're fun sometimes, but I don't even really need to go to that optimization center. I actually already know what I need, and I have everything I need here, in the now, where I am inside my body, and at my disposal. Those are great for certain people and certain things, but like sauna, for example, the real benefit comes from using it like 3 or 4 times a week, just like an LED light therapy. So for most people, if they don't have it at home, that's not likely unless they have one at the gym and they're going to the gym every day. We're in a world now, especially in the last 4 years, where you need to take your health into your own hands and be really discerning. And and for so many of us, we need solutions that we can just use ourselves, and we don't need like an assistant to do for us, or we don't have to go to a clinic all the time to do. There are some amazing like thought leaders and healers out there, and definitely for like neuro emotional work and neuro linguistic therapy and things like that. There are some amazing things that, with guidance from someone else, it can help you heal yourself in a way that it may take you a lot longer on your own. But in general, this idea that we've given our power away, I think, is at the heart of it. And we're not thinking for ourselves in anything, instead of thinking for ourselves actually in everything, and putting a lot of intention behind where does our attention go. Because there's only ever now. And I don't want to get too metaphysical with it, but like really, there's, even when you're planning for the future, you're working in the now. And anything
Mm-hmm.
that's happened already, whether it's in the past or just as in the information field, it's it's no longer directly relevant. It only informs what you continue to do now. And so it's time to, seize the reins, and you can start slow. You can just start out with like going to sleep earlier and waking up earlier, buying a grounding sheet for your bed. But sauna is really it's this very spiritual experience that everybody has, definitely with our product. And we have some other cool things that I recommend that we actually sell, that are like accessories. Like, talk to the Ronce at Mitozen. He's based in Sarasota. He has some really, really magical guy. Anyway, we sell some of his products like Root Zen, and you apply a little bit of Root Zen before you go in the sauna, and you can put blue eyes, which is methylene blue drops, in your eyes, and you can kind of just help bring yourself into the present through activation of the senses, and all that allows you to just be for this moment where you can listen to some guided meditation, or just some healing frequencies from relaxing music, or do prayer or meditation, whatever you're interested in. And you can have this moment that's just to you. There's no track lighting, there's no TV, there's no phone, unless it's on airplane mode and it's playing music. And it can be really powerful, like taking time to just enjoy those few moments. That will reflect upon the rest of your day. It will make you more productive and efficient in everything to do. So you don't need to rush to work and like get in the car and drink your coffee on the way to the work. Take care of yourself and take time to just be. Take these like clarity breaks, and however you like to, and it has this ripple effect on the rest of your day. And also, it gets you out of working in your life, and it helps you kind of more work on your life. Like, what are my goals, and what do I deeply desire, and what bothers me, and what relationships do I want to work on? What other ones do I want to let go? And as we cleanse our body, slowly it leads to a re-empowerment of our mind that then inevitably drives us to spiritual development, body, mind, and spirit. I think mostly in that order, because we're just so detached, because we're so attached, and we're so like sick nowadays.
Yeah, I agree. I love it. And I would love to see your saunas be purchased by all of the fire stations across the nation, across the world, because
Mm.
we benefit from sauna just like anyone else, but we definitely should be purchasing your sauna. So I'll try and connect you with our department after this conversation, and all the float centers and people that are doing all this stuff. I'll be sure to make a lot of connections for you, but I know you got to get going. One question I'd love to ask you is, if you were going to die today, what would you want to share with the world?
Wow, it's all about the love. Love is the unifying principle. That's what the creator is, and that's what we are. And it's the one thing that has no opposite. Everything else is in duality. And remembering love, remembering self-love, it's a powerfully beautiful thing. We can just be in love and walk in gratitude and be kind to other people, and the frequency of love is really high. And when you carry that and you bring that to other people by making them smile or making them laugh or whatever, I mean, that's the essence of life. It's the most powerful, awesome thing that there is. And don't forget it. Or if you have forgotten it, remember, love. Love is the most important thing.
It's beautiful truth, man. Good wisdom from you, Brian. And, love and appreciation seem very similar in their vibrational states. So thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to sending people your way, and I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. It's been wonderful. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to the episode. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Spotify, YouTube, and iTunes, and rate the show. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
What we call reality is in fact nothing more than a culturally sanctioned and linguistically reinforced hallucination.